PMI, I'm Hannah, and this is the Purple Sector. So today we're looking a little bit different. Charlotte is away because she started at university, and I have a very special guest on with today. This is Ollie.
So yeah, I'm Ollie. I'm from TGS F1, which is another YouTube channel and also Formula One blog and website on tgsf1.com. And pretty similar to what you guys do, tend to do some race reactions, some generic F1 content. But yeah, a lot of the same stuff, and it's part of the same content community. So really buzzing to be on, and yeah, excited to talk about what was an absolutely epic race.
But it was, to be honest, I think chaotic from the start. So if you look at, for example, qualifying, the amount of difficulties the cars had on track, they'd put a rule in place that had a maximum lap time. However, even that didn't remove all of the issues of the drivers slowing down towards the final couple of chicanes in order to get a toe on each other. What did you think about quali?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, you always get this sort of issue at Monza. Last year was hilarious. This year, after the F2 and F3, was almost dangerous. The qualifying there, it seemed pretty crazy. There's that sort of carnage that you expect. I don't think anyone thought that maximum lap time was going to produce anywhere near the sort of results you would need at somewhere like Monza, because we weren't making them go quick enough to not be able to still be in the way. And then when everyone comes out for Q1 for that final sector, it's absolute carnage at the chicanes. Like you said, Vettel found himself in the middle of a sandwich of cars, Russell holding him up, Raikkonen nearly ploughing into the back of Ocon, people having to abandon laps despite knowing that they need to find tenths or even seconds. So it was difficult, but I also think, do you want to change it? Because it does always add something to the race weekend, the Monza qualifying session. You know it's going to be a little bit mental.
Yeah, I agree. Monza always seems to have that scrappy level of qualifying. Formula 3 earlier in the weekend was so dangerous. For one, it was better this time around than it was previously. I think one lap qualifying should be put in place. I hate it in the sense that I think I do like the qualifying setup, but Monza every year in all the series has these difficulties, and I only think it takes one incident gone wrong, either have to adapt it or you don't race at Monza. And I think if we didn't race at Monza, the Tifosi would have our guts for garters.
I don't know whether anyone will bother to change it. They seem quite lax on doing anything too drastic to rules ever until it comes to party modes and slowing down Mercedes. So who knows what they'll come up with next.
I was going to say, speaking of party modes that we had, obviously the rule change coming forth, and we all kind of thought, oh, it'll slow down Mercedes. Who do you think the party mode change has backfired on the most?
Bottas said he was feeling it, but I think he was lying. I think he just had such a terrible start and he lost his head at the race. I think the racing points obviously got lucky with where Lance was during his sort of pit window when everything happened, which obviously led to his podium, but they looked like they were off the pace at a track where, we've been saying straight line speed for these racing points all season. And then the other team who were just so weirdly anonymous was the Red Bulls. So I don't know what we're going to attribute that to. I think Albon had floor damage maybe, and Max just seemed, obviously had to retire the car, but those guys seem to just not look anywhere near the pace at all on Sunday. So
for me, it was the Red Bulls. I think this weekend is Helmut Marko and Christian Horner have shot themselves in the foot. I think if you look at the pace in qualifying, so Verstappen was 5th. I initially thought he'd probably be around 3rd. Albon was 9th, which, to be honest, at one point I was worried he wasn't actually going to get out of Q1 because he was right on the cusp of being eliminated.
Not a bad spot for him, which is sad to say, but
that car just seems very temperamental on and off track. And to be honest, going into the race was Verstappen's performance the whole race before the retirement wasn't that good. At one point I think he was struggling to get past, I think it was the Williams of Nicholas Latifi. But for me, and I think maybe for you as well, the biggest disappointment of the weekend, Valtteri Bottas.
Yeah, Valtteri for me, I mean, he was on the radio off that race start. I tweeted during the race or after the race that I am done with Valtteri Bottas, #wasteman. And the reason that I tweeted that was because this track, we know you've got to get to that first corner first. Everyone says that at every racetrack. This one in particular, that right left, if you've got track position there, you can really dictate that first lap. And with the clean air, you can punch quite a big hole. So we knew that Valtteri was going to have a good start. he had a tragically bad start. It was embarrassingly bad. He was blaming his engine, but when you watch the bird's eye view of the restart on the replay, just looked like he reacted slower than anyone else. And I think Monza is one of the tracks that highlights it most, where if you're a millionth of a second slower than the cars behind you, you get gobbled up so quickly. They were all over the back of him. Lando Norris came piling through, got his elbows out, pushed him out of the way, and everyone was just flying past him. Then we get to the incident with the red flag. Lewis has got his penalty. He's got his chance. I think he was, I can't remember, was he 7 on the grid, 8 on the grid maybe for the restart? And you honestly thought that if he has got any chance of pushing Lewis Hamilton, he has got to get that Mercedes, carve through those cars that are in front of him, win this race, and hope that Lewis, maybe gets a 10th place or maybe even finishes out of the points. And, short-term thinking, it would have been terrible for the race. I don't think anyone wanted Bottas to go through and win it. But long-term thinking, for the sake of the championship, he needed to really win that race or podium and hope that Lewis was somewhere in the back end of the points or not in the points at all. He almost got caught by Lewis Hamilton. If there'd been, 2 or 3 more laps, he was probably going to be in having Lewis in his wing mirrors. So just a really shoddy performance from him. He was looking for excuses, which I don't think were true or fair. I've not seen anything from Mercedes to say that he was particularly running a bad car or had damage. And he's just, I'm done with him. I'm officially done with him. He's not ever going to challenge Lewis. He's not going to win a world championship. And they need to get George Russell in that car ASAP.
Yeah, I think for me, this weekend with Valtteri Bottas, I felt that he lost the championship lead races ago. He lost any shot of challenging Lewis. And this, to me, is like the nail in the coffin of why Mercedes should have replaced him with George Russell. I think he's nowhere near where he needs to be. He finished 10 seconds ahead of Hamilton. Hamilton, who was at the back, was 30 seconds down the road from the leader and did some really good overtakes, fought his way through the field. To me, justified why he gets paid so much. Is not just when he's out front, he's dominant, but when he's got to fight through the pack, he knows how to do it, and he's still got that kind of innate racer instinct that'll go for those overtakes, and he had nothing to lose. I don't see a future with Bottas if Hamilton goes and retires in the next couple of years. They've got an average driver who's not exactly going to inspire the team to another world championship, and I just think it's a shame, because if we could have seen George Russell in that Mercedes for next year, I think he'd lit the grid on fire.
Yeah, I think Bottas' problem now, as you said, is because he's not proven himself to catch him. He is just, Mr. Buffer, Mr. Second driver, and he's perfect for that role. He says he doesn't want it. He says he doesn't feel like that driver, but as you touched on there, he can't even, keep Max Verstappen at bay when he needs to, and he can't, people are catching him. And like you said, he's not the most inspiring figure if Lewis did leave. So
I was going to say, speaking of things that were done, is probably the thing that was the catalyst for a lot of the drama was Kevin Magnussen's Haas pulling to the side near the pit lane. We had Antonio Giovinazzi and Lewis Hamilton box. Once the pit lane had closed, we had Pierre Gasly box under the virtual safety car before they'd actually closed the pit lane. What did you kind of think of that whole situation with Kevin and the pit lane?
Yeah, I didn't realise how close he was to the pit lane for quite a long time, actually, because where they were panning, unless I just completely missed it, it looked like they'd gone virtual safety car. So I was like, right, okay. It looked like they could have maybe rolled him back into that exit because he had pulled over at like a station, and it looked like maybe they were going to try and move him backwards. And then when the camera panned out a little bit and he was right by the pits, I was like, okay, that's quite interesting. Like, then they start wheeling him down towards the pits, and you realise that, right, okay, they're going to probably close the pit lane here. I had no idea when Lewis pulled in, even though the safety car was out, that it was closed, to be honest. And I was looking in the background. We were all looking in the background. I was like, right, Carlos is going to come in. Like, they need to double stack them. This is going to be a big, like, pit stop. Like, what's going to go on here? And then Carlos goes past, and commentators are like, oh, Carlos has gone past. And then Lando goes past, and Lando Norris and Perez, or whoever it was. And suddenly, I think it was Crofty was realising, Brundle was realising, and, oh, hang on a minute. And then you knew, we were just waiting for the radio message. I couldn't wait to hear Lewis's reaction because I thought he was going to be absolutely livid. But he was quite calm, to be fair to him. So I then tweeted out, 10-second stop, go penalty. Come on, lads. Like, semi-jokingly, but also, as they made the point, Carlos Sainz stuck to the rules and then comes out back into like 8th place or whatever it might be, and Lewis's Hamilton is all the way up the road having cheated. So all of a sudden it looked like it was going to have to be. And then when Gio got 10-second stop go, everyone just went mental, didn't they? Twitter was going alight. It seemed harsh, but the rules are the rules. You know, I love it when they slow things down on the camera and be like, oh, well, shouldn't they have seen this? And I'm like, you're playing it at like 1% speed. Like, I don't know why you think it's so easy to see all these things, but he went past those 2 posts, pit lane was closed, and then all of a sudden, I think that's when everyone thought, right, we are in for some drama now.
I was sat there and you saw where Kevin Magnussen pulled over, was where he had actually pulled, wasn't an actual full station, it was a marshal station. So it kind of, there was no way that they were ever going to be able to pull that car backwards into it. And even if they had, there were no actual, other than the metal barrier, there were no tyre barriers, things like that. So I was like, okay, so they're going to go close the pit lane. And I look at it and I'm like, okay, I can get Hamilton not seeing the lights, because I'm not going to lie, I can't drive a car, let alone a Formula One car. However, they all get an immediate notification from the FIA that the pit lane is closed. If Hamilton had gone to box, had got past the white line just before the wall to the pit entry, and Mercedes had come on the radio and said, Hamilton, don't box, pull back out, and he had swerved back onto the racing line, because he was that far ahead, there were no cars near him, I'd have said, that doesn't deserve a penalty. Here's an exception. You're doing it that to not break a rule that would be worse. However, the fact that Mercedes didn't tell him, I then did laugh at him during the red flag, going to the stewards. It did feel a little bit like he was getting a bit big for his boots and was like, I'm going to go there, I'm going to deal with it, I'm going to sort it. We knew by that point it was going to be a penalty. I think for me what was most interesting was Lance Stroll. There was a rule under red flag that you can change tyres. So Lance Stroll got effectively a free pit stop. And even though there's a rule that is a mandatory pit stop, it doesn't specify that it has to be during the normal racing. And for me, that rule is daft. We've seen a lot of daft rules this season with the rules on the radio and the formation lap. However, this one, for me, just as bad as what Hamilton did, is he's gained an advantage through the actions of someone else. Is the red flag was triggered, he's been able to get a free pit stop. Unless that car, unless the wheels are completely gone or there is an actual safety issue, they should be told you cannot pit until the following lap. What do you think?
Was the starkest sort of example of where it can go wrong. And I think you're entirely right. I mean, I don't like giving Lance hate because I think he gets too much hate because of the whole daddy thing. But this one was just a bit ridiculous. I mean, he's just held on. They've held on. Racing Point have held on. They were probably holding on for a safety car, not a red flag, obviously. But the gamble paid off. He just didn't come in. His pit window was extended. He was going a little bit longer for whatever reason. You make your own luck, I guess. They stuck out. They stuck him out there. And next thing you know is, like you said, he's saved himself, gained, 24, 25 seconds of race time. And that proved to make all the difference. Frustrating thing for me as a McLaren fan was obviously it was Lando next car up the road.
He had to take the pit stop as normal and he'd ended up about 24 seconds behind. He'd have probably been around 10th, 11th, around where Sergio Perez was. But I think our last, but by no means least, is probably my favourite moment of the whole race. And it was the end, seeing Pierre Gasly win. I don't think anyone on earth could have predicted this. 12 years after Sebastian Vettel won for Toro Rosso. What do you think of Pierre Gasly's win?
Yeah, absolutely sensational. And that start off the restart, he started so well. That's what won him the race. I think that restart, getting himself into that position following the red flag. And then when Lewis had to box, all hell sort of broke loose with the Alfa Romeos even sticking around for a while, and Kimi. And the thing that I think was quite useful to him was Kimi sort of then became a buffer man to everyone behind him. So once he had P1, he had clean air in front of him. He had a chance to bang in some quick laps. You saw how frustrated Carlos Sainz was trying to get past Kimi, but Kim wasn't making it easy for anyone. He was racing very fair in a slower car, but same with where Gio was. He was only there for 2 laps before I think he had to serve his own stop-go. But I think those guys helped him a little bit. When there was probably 15 laps to go, I think is when it was like a clear shootout of, right, Sainz is going to be in striking distance, probably the last lap, possibly with 3 laps to go. It looked like Pierre was going to do it. And my head was saying McLaren, but my heart was saying Pierre. I was like, do it. Hold on, lad. I want you to hold on. A 2-4 for McLaren is brilliant. And after everything he's gone through, it was so much pressure on his shoulders, and it was getting closer and closer. Is he going to be in DRS? Is he? And then he was for a second, then he wasn't just before the detection point. And it was, he managed to get it for the final lap. And it just looked like, I think they say at Monza, is that you need to be a second and a half or so quicker to actually get past anyone. It did start to look like he was never going to catch him. It was emotional stuff. It was quite heart-wrenching, and it was great to see in a good way. It was pulling on the heartstrings, and fantastic day for Formula One and brilliant podium. I was saying I felt a bit sorry for Carlos. He'd probably preferred to have been, 10 seconds back than that close, and maybe felt like if he never had a chance, that P2 would have felt very sweet. But like he said, 4 tenths at the line, he would have caught him by the end of the straight with DRS. So
Pierre Gasly is one of the ones where I just felt in that moment nobody could have deserved it more. He has had the year from pretty much hell. I could think of very few drivers that would be able to come back and bounce back with that level of resilience. And kind of after the podium in Brazil last year and the kind of momentum he's had across the season, I was expecting, okay, maybe say by Bahrain or Abu Dhabi, he'll have 1 podium finish. And to be able to hold on like he did, because we all know plenty of drivers could have crumbled in that situation. This, to me, symbolises all that I love about Formula One. Is there are some moments where you watch the racing and it's predictable and it gets boring, but you stick it out. And you stick it out for moments like this to see the true underdog, to have the guy that pretty much got shafted and a lot of people wrote him off as soon as he got dropped from Red Bull, coming out there on a weekend that Red Bull did abysmally. A perfect weekend for Pierre Gasly. But also a very sad weekend for the Williams team. This was the shock announcement earlier on in the week that the Williams family, so Claire, Frank, were going to be leaving the team that Frank helped create back in the 1970s. And even though George didn't do that well, Latifi finished 11th. I'm not going to lie, I thought Latifi was going to get points before George Russell did. But I wish they had got points. I wish it had been the perfect send-off.
Yeah, it was sad. I thought that some of the interviews were very honest from Claire, and I thought some of her reasoning for why they were stepping away were fair enough. They know that they've taken it as far as they can, and they also said admittedly that if they can't put in as much into the team now that it's sort of not theirs and they don't feel like they're the people to progress it, then it is the time to step away. The speed at which it's happened has surprised me. It was literally announced, and then it was like, right, that's it, last week. And suddenly, tributes were coming in, and it just seemed like, right, that's it. But maybe a clean break is what they need. The thing that I was thinking was when Lewis was carving back through the field, Latifi was holding that 10th spot for a while. Like you said, he was keeping Max behind him at the race. He was having a pretty stellar, holding his ground where he was during the race. And I was just thinking, anyone could hold up Lewis at all just to make sure that Nicholas could sneak in.
Now, as in most things, we move on. So we head over to Mugello. What are your kind of predictions for the race weekend? So who do you think is going to come top in qualifying? And who do you think is going to be on the podium?
Mercedes dominating Saturday and Sunday. Red Bull need to bounce back. Like, not a case of do we want them to, whatever. They need to keep any chance of, making this interesting at all involved. So I'm going to say those two are going to be the top performers. McLaren have already said that perhaps it's not going to be their best race after this one. And let's see what Racing Point can do, because I'm sure Checo will be disappointed. The team will be disappointed. They've not quite lived up to the hype.
See, for me, I think it'll be Hamilton pole. I think he's going to be an unstoppable force yet again, I think, this year. Race-wise, I think Lewis will win. I think Valtteri second. However, I'm probably less sure about that than I have been in previous races. And I'm going to go Daniel Ricciardo for third. I think he's got a good shot. The Renaults are looking racy. The sad thing is, I also think that this will be another farcical weekend for Ferrari. I think both their drivers will finish. Either Seb will finish out the points, and I think Charles may pick up like 8th place or 9th place, but I do not have high hopes for them. Ollie, that's all we've got time for. It's been a pleasure having you on the channel. I will make sure to leave all the links to the channel in the description bar below. I've been Hannah, and this is the Purple Sector. Showfile, bye.